It's October 14th, 2015. We're in the Rogers Center in downtown Toronto, where 49,742 people are packed in to watch the hometown Blue Jays take on the Texas Rangers in Game 5 of what has already become one of the most competitive and emotional playoff series baseball has seen in recent years. At this point in the game, it's about 6 p.m. local time as the Blue Jays take the field for the top of the 7th inning. The players may not know it yet, but they're about to be a part of one of the most insane innings in baseball history, full of unpredictable moments, unforgettable highlights, and some unlikely heroes and villains. An hour of baseball that would change not just the complexion of the series, but possibly the entire game of baseball. This is the story of the craziest inning in MLB history. This is Sports Oddity. Before we can talk about the events that follow, we must first understand how we got here in the first place, and what the stakes are for each of the teams involved. For the Rangers, this is a story of redemption. After missing the playoffs in 2013 and 2014, and losing the first AL wildcard game in 2012, a win tonight would put the Rangers into the ALCS for the third time in 6 seasons, and put them one step closer to redeeming themselves from back-to-back World Series losses in 2010 and 2011, the latter of which saw them come within one strike of winning it all. But while the Rangers were trying to take advantage of the last breaths of a potential dynasty, the Blue Jays were trying to start one of their own. Heading into the 2015 season, the Blue Jays were the owners of the longest playoff drought in North American sports, having gone 21 straight seasons without a playoff appearance, and as such, they were bound and determined to make it back and win now. That offseason, they signed a hometown guy and a 3-time All-Star in Russell Martin to be their full-time catcher, and in order to fill their need at third base, they traded with the Oakland A's to acquire their All-Star third baseman Josh Donaldson, a move that I would say kinda worked out for them. But the moves didn't end there. At the trade deadline that season, not only did they acquire All-Star Troy Tulowitzki from the Rockies, but they also acquired David Price from the Tigers, who would go on to finish second in Cy Young voting that season. With this talent added to an already stacked lineup that included Jose Bautista and Edwin Encarnacion in their primes, the Blue Jays broke out in a big way in 2015 and won the AL East for the first time since 1993. This would set up a matchup in the ALDS that would determine which team would complete their redemption arc. After losing the first 2 games at home, the latter of which took 14 innings, the Blue Jays came back in a big way in Games 3 and 4. Marco Estrada pitched brilliantly in Game 3, only giving up 1 run in 6.1 innings of work and leading his team to a 5-1 victory. And in Game 4, the 2012 Cy Young combo of David Price and R.A. Dickey came together to fend off elimination. They didn't pitch spectacularly, Price in particular looked a bit shaky, but the offense performed and they pitched well enough to get an 8-4 win. This leads us to tonight, which would start off as a tale of 2 starting pitchers. On the mound for the Rangers was 31-year-old Cole Hamels, who for many reasons you would expect to be in this situation. Over the course of his first 10 seasons, Hamels had established himself as one of the better pitchers in baseball, and a key part of the Phillies' juggernaut toward the end of the last decade. And though 2015 was a bit of a rough year by his standards, it didn't matter much for the Rangers, who mainly acquired him for nights like tonight. But while the Rangers went for the known quantity, the Blue Jays threw out a wild card. In many ways, you wouldn't expect Marcus Stroman to be pitching this game. After all, not only was he just 24 years old and pitching in his second big league season, but just 7 months prior to this start, he tore his ACL in spring training. Considering the severity of the injury, It's a miracle that he even managed to make it back to the Blue Jays that season in the first place. But yet somehow, in just 6 months, he was able to fully rehab from his surgery and complete his degree at Duke University at the same time. And now here he was, on the mound for the single biggest game the Blue Jays have played in the last 22 seasons. However, despite the obvious differences between the two starters, both have performed equally well throughout this game up to this point. Thus far, the only blemishes on Stroman's record are a double that turned into a run in the first and a home run given up to Shin-Soo Choo in the 3rd inning. After that, he would only allow 3 more hits for the rest of his night. Meanwhile, Hamels has pitched just as well as his younger counterpart, with his only blemishes coming off a Jose Bautista double in the 3rd and an Edwin Encarnacion home run in the 6th. And we'll hear more from those two in just a bit. But for right now, we enter the top of the 7th inning with Aaron Sanchez taking over for Stroman on the mound for Toronto. At first, the inning would start off just like any other. Rougned Odor started off the inning with a base hit into left field, a sacrifice bunt moved him over to 2nd, and a Delino DeShields groundout moved him over to 3rd. This brought the aforementioned Choo to the plate, a switch hitter who, because of the right-handed pitcher, happened to be standing in the left-handed batter's box. With the go-ahead run on 3rd base and 2 outs already recorded in the inning, everybody knew that the outcome of this at-bat was going to change the complexion of the ballgame, and possibly the series. But almost nobody could have predicted how it actually would have happened. On the 4th pitch of the at-bat, just like he had done a million times before, Russell Martin went to throw the ball back to Sanchez. The next few minutes would be a blur for both the fans and the players alike. At the exact same time that Martin was throwing back to the pitcher, Choo had placed his bat in the middle of the throwing lane. This caused the ball to ricochet off the bat and veer off into foul territory. Odor, recognizing this for the live ball that it was, sprinted as fast as he could into home and scored the go-ahead run. When it first happened, home plate umpire Dale Scott immediately signaled that the ball was dead. However, when he was called out on this by the Rangers manager, he called all of the umpires together for a review, and they ultimately ruled in the Rangers' favor, allowing them the run and the lead. And of course, it's important to point out here that the Rangers are 100% in the right here. In fact, MLB has a very specific rule in the rulebook that specifically covers this issue. So I'm sure that the 50,000 rowdy Blue Jays fans that just got cut off from alcohol would be totally understanding with this decision.
People got to quit throwing beer cans out of the upper decks. You're hitting people down below.
You know, someone in the first row just got hit by a beer can from the upper deck.
Or from anywhere, not just the upper deck.
Babies down there, little kids.
Yeah. Needless to say, they didn't appreciate the call very much, and to show their displeasure, they showered the field not just with booze, but beer cans and empty bottles. And it didn't take very long for the situation to get quite ugly. As the players got evacuated for their own safety, police and security took their place on the field trying to secure the situation. But of course, there really wasn't much they could do besides wait the crowd out. Ultimately, the game would be delayed for nearly 20 minutes before the fans finally calmed down, the grounds crew got the field cleaned up, and players returned to the field to finish out the inning. Once play finally resumed, it would only take 2 more pitches for Sanchez to strike out Choo and end the inning. This sent the Blue Jays into the bottom half of the inning, needing basically a miracle to change the momentum of this game around and get back on top, or at least back into it. Enter Elvis Andrus and the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad inning. At this point in his career, Elvis Andrus had cemented himself as one of the cornerstones of the Rangers roster, and as the franchise shortstop, he was the leader of the infield, and was pretty well known for having a decent glove, which makes the bottom half of the 7th inning that much more unexplainable. It started off innocently enough. Russell Martin started the inning for Toronto with a pretty easy ground ball just to the left of the shortstop. but inexplicably, it clanked off of Andrus's glove and he wasn't able to recover in time to get Martin. Runner on first, nobody out. On the very next at-bat, Kevin Pillar hit one right at first baseman Mitch Moreland that looked like a tailor-made 3-6-1 double play. However, Moreland never got a good handle on the baseball, and he threw one into the dirt that again Andrus couldn't recover. Runners on first and second, nobody out. This brings up Ryan Goins to the plate. Now, everybody in the stadium knows that Goins is going to be bunting here, and the Rangers have a wheel play in place to try and thwart the sacrifice. Essentially, Adrian Beltre would charge in from third base, Hamels would cover the first base line, the second baseman would cover second base, and the shortstop would come around to third base, and if they could get the runner at third, they would throw to Andrus. When the time came to execute, the plan came together perfectly. The ball went straight to the charging Beltre, and even though the Blue Jays put a pinch runner on second base, they had him dead to rights at third. Or at least, they did. Realistically, the Rangers should have been out of this inning already, and 6 outs away from moving on. But instead of having 3 outs, they now had the bases loaded and nobody out, and it was really nobody's fault besides Elvis Andrus. For a small moment, it looked like they might have been able to get out of it unscathed. They finally recorded a force out at home plate, and they just needed a ground ball to the shortstop or second baseman to possibly get them out of the mess. But with new pitcher Sam Dyson on the hill, and Hamels watching helplessly from the dugout, things were about to go from bad to much worse. It started off with yet another botched play by the Rangers. On a 2-0 pitch, Dawes hit in a short pop fly just over the head of Odor at second base. But instead of turning around and going to the spot where the ball was going to land, Odor backpedaled, leaving him defenseless as the ball landed right over his head. If this had happened with 2 outs, it would have been an absolute disaster for the Rangers. But because this happened with only 1 out, all of the runners were tagging. So while the tying run did come across the score, they were at least able to recover and get a force out at second base for the second out. And this brings us to the tipping point of the game and the series, as Jose Bautista comes up to bat with 2 on and 2 out. If Bautista can come through just one more time, he could potentially single-handedly propel his team to the championship series and become a national hero. But if Dyson was able to escape this jam with just 1 run given up, he can reclaim the momentum for Texas and put his team in a very good position heading into the final 2 innings. However, by now, you already know what happens next. In one smooth motion, Bautista launched a majestic home run into the upper deck, gave his team a 3-run lead, and unleashed an iconic bat flip that still has yet to be topped. As you might imagine, the fans at the Rogers Center went absolutely berserk, and as a result of their delirium, some of them started to throw their trash back onto the field once again. In turn, this prompted some of the players on the Toronto side to try in vain to keep the fans calm and stop them from throwing things on the field, and this included Edwin Encarnacion, who at the time was standing in the on-deck circle. However, unfortunately, Dyson would misunderstand Encarnacion's intent. Of course, at the time, Dyson was just a little bit pissed off, and who could blame him? He had just given up a 450-plus foot home run, he had just given up the lead in an elimination playoff game, and to top it all off, he just got shown up on national TV. So when he saw Edwin in the on-deck circle with his arms raised, he didn't see a player begging with the crowd to calm down, he saw a player trying to egg them on. So naturally, he voiced his displeasure, but before Edwin could plead his case, the benches were already cleared. What started off as an effort to try and keep the crowd calmed down now turned to an effort to lower the tensions between 50-plus people who have now stormed onto the field looking for a fight. And while the crowd on the field would quickly be dispersed, it only made the situation with the crowd in the stands even worse, leading to yet another 2-out delay of game. But eventually, peace would be relatively restored to the Rogers Center, and after singles from Edwin Encarnacion and Chris Colabello, Troy Tulowitzki would finally put the inning to an end with a pop fly back to the catcher, putting the finishing touches on an hour-long baseball odyssey that would change the game forever. The Jays would go on to win the game and the series with the final score of 6-3, before eventually getting eliminated by the future champion Royals. But while the Blue Jays' postseason appearance didn't last much longer, the legacy of that appearance definitely did through Jose's bat flip, as the controversy from it sent a shockwave through the entirety of Major League Baseball, and almost single-handedly ushered in the era of bat flipping and letting the kids play. All in all, even after all these years, this game and that inning continue to be some of my favorite moments in baseball history, as in my opinion it perfectly encapsulates the beauty, the absurdity, the excitement, and the highs and lows of baseball. And in this case, I think Harold Reynolds said it best.
But what a seventh inning, one you will never forget. You'll be talking about where you were when it happened.